Hey, Choose Life Nation. This is Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach from thereboundcoach.com. And normally I get to come to you in the evening, and my room is a little darker. But today we are doing a special pre record because, y'all, you might be one of the ones left behind. And you might be asking, what are you talking about? First of all, again, my name is Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach from thereboundcoach.com, and you are watching or listening to a special pre-recorded episode of the Rebound Coach Live. I'm really, really glad that you're here with me today. Obviously, you are watching either the live stream of the pre-recording or you're watching the replay. Either way, let me know in the comments that you're here. Today's going to be special, and a long time ago, well, not like super long, like in 2015, I did a live workshop called Bridal Triage for the betrayed and wounded wife. And that title came back to me last night as I was preparing for today because I think it's important. I was reminded recently of all the women who are left behind left behind by men who just decided to move on with their lives, and they might have left behind children, but they left women behind. And I've always been really attached to those who've been left behind. And if it's your first time here and you don't know who I am or why we're having this conversation, number one, I want to say thank you for coming. I'm going to take off these glasses for glare. I want to say thank you for coming. There's a lot of places to be on the internet. There's a lot of places for your scroll to be. So I am, number one, very thankful that you are here with me. So that's number one. But if you're wondering what a rebound coach is, I help people get unstuck. Specifically, I serve high achieving women of faith who've been through betrayal or trauma or abuse and who want to reclaim territory in their relationship with themselves. And that, of course, started with my own story. Uh, Here's the headline. I was married 10 years to a man who wanted me dead. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for someone like me who was raised in a good Christian home with Christian parents that loved God, loved each other, were married for a lifetime. At the same time, I was molested from the time I was 8 to the time I was 16. And that radically affects how you see yourself, how you relate to God in a household of faith, and how you relate to men. So, fast forward, I met the man that I married and eventually divorced. There were red flags, there were reasons not to be together. But as a praying woman, I believed God's answer was yes. And because of that, I believed that whatever came, we would outlast it, we'd overcome it. God would swoop in and save the day. And all I had to do was my part. And so I did my best to do my part every single day. And trouble came right away. It never quite left. We got into a cycle of what I call coping and crisis. So this is where you're never quite good, you're never quite satisfied, but you're spending your time trying to maintain. You're walking on eggshells, you're trying not to upset him, you're trying to follow the rules. Except this particular abuse dynamic, the rules keep changing, and it's hard to make it. It's hard to make it. And no matter how carefully you try to hold up your house of cards, somehow there's a crisis that blows through and just blows everything up. And those crises just upset everything. And you're having to very carefully rebuild your life again and again and again and again. And so we were in that cycle for over 9 years, almost 10, or yeah, almost 10. Everything blew up at the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. He left for another woman, and I found out he and that person had been plotting my murder for months by the time I found out about it. So, needless to say, that's kind of the record scratch moment in the movie. That's the hold on. How did this become my life? Kind of kind of moment, and everything comes to a standstill. I was threatened as a wife, as a mom, as a woman, as a child of God, and also as a coach. I've been a life coach over 20 years. At that time, I had been coaching marriage and relationships for about 5 or 6 years by the time all of that happened. So if you can imagine building a platform, an identity around a particular idea, that was me, except that was the very thing that had blown up. And I had some really important decisions to make. And, I could allow the identity that my ex husband had planned for me to tell me how I was allowed to express myself as a woman, as a mom, as a believer in Messiah, how many days I had left on the planet, or I could choose life. So, through a divine series of events, not only am I alive, my children and I are safe, learning and growing together, and you and I get to share this moment in time. I wrote a book out of all of that because, y'all, it was a lot. The name of the book is I Choose Life. See if you can see it that way. Rewrite your love story and change your legacy. And this is not only my story, and it's not only a story about an abusive marriage, but all the things that predispose us to abuse. So the original childhood molestation and other circumstances in my life that kind of set me up. And if you're here and you've had an experience of betrayal or trauma or abuse in your adulthood, I would wager that there was some predispositions for you as well. Also, this is the subtitle of this book is it's I Choose Life, Rewrite Your Love Story and Change Your Legacy. And when I talk about love story, it's not just about your romantic relationships in adulthood, but also how you learned to love and how you learned to be loved. And that's something that happens to us, happens through us, happens with us long before we're adults and participating in adult romantic relationships. So if any of that speaks to you, your next step is going to thereboundcoach.com/book. That is thereboundcoach.com/book. You can get one of these hardcover books right here that I will personally sign and put in the mail to you, or you can get one from Amazon, or you can get an ebook copy. All of that information is at thereboundcoach.com/book. Okay. So I want to tell you about that, but today I mentioned about folks being left behind. And I've always identified with that. When I was a kid, I was a part of this like camp, like Christian camp in the summer, kind of like VBS, if you know that language. And they had this thing where people picked Bible stories and they got to act them out. And I picked Rachel and Leah. And I look back at that like, why did I pick that story? That's a story about two sisters who were married to the same man. And one, the man wanted, and then the father tricked the man into marrying the sister he did not want first. And then he had to work an additional 7 years for the father-in-law, to marry the woman that he wanted to marry. And so eventually he was married to both women and began to have children with the woman he did not want to marry. And the Bible says Leah had weak eyes, meaning that she was not attractive, right? At least not as attractive as her sister. And so she had a bunch of babies and she longed for love and affection from her husband. And the Bible never says that she got that. She did get a bunch of sons, though. And I wonder if that was a consolation prize of some sort. But I've always identified with her, Leah, as the undesirable one and the one that, no one's paying attention to. Jacob loved the sister Rachel. He worked a total of 14 years to be with her. She was definitely the favorite wife, but Leah was the one left behind. And that's the one that I kind of was drawn to. And even in my season where I was married and I was coaching marriage and relationships, I've always had a heart for the spouse left behind when someone moves on. And recently I saw on Facebook, there's a couple in real life that I knew where the man abused the woman, the man left the woman, the man cheated on the woman, and I've done my best to help the woman. get her life together and get resources to care for her children and just be a listening ear. And y'all, I recently saw that gentleman, we're using that in air quotes, gentleman, get remarried. And he got remarried in a religious ceremony uh, with a type and shadow of the woman he left behind. And by I say type and shadow, like folks have a particular type, a person that they like, a body type, a person type. And so this was the same kind of type as the woman he left behind. And of course, my heart is with the left behind woman, even though she is much better off without this gentleman who abused her and left her and cheated on her. She's better off, but my heart is with her because she is a woman left behind and left behind with a bunch of kids to take care of, right? It's just not fair. It's just not fair. And I empathize with those who are left behind. And you may be someone who's left behind. That may be how you identify. Even again, even if someone is abusive to you, neglectful of you, um, unfaithful to you, and you are better without that person, your heart still loves them. You chose them for whatever reason you chose them, and your heart still loves them, and you have a heart desire that things should have been different. I wish things had been different. I wish he had remained faithful. I wish he were kinder. I wish he would get help, get the counseling, get the medication, get the help that he needed to be a suitable partner for me. Instead, I'm here as the one left behind. And I just want to say, number one, I see you. I see you in a world that will tell you, oh, just move on. Oh, just, celebrate that you're done with that man. Oh, be free, right? And there is time and place for all of that. There's time and place for celebrating the abuse has left your home, the abuse has left your life, or the abuse has left your family. There's time and place for all of that. But I also see that space that needs to mourn, that needs to say, you know what, I wish things had been different. I invested 1, 2, 3, 8, 15, 25 years of my life to this individual who's now left. And that's not easy. So if you happen to be the one left behind, I just want you to know you're not alone. You're not alone. And it's going to be okay. So, yes, number one, I'm checking notes to make sure I don't miss anything. Number one, I see you. Number two, you can do this. You can do this. You might be in a situation where many left behind spouses, betrayed and wounded wives find themselves where you're like, how am I supposed to live life now? And not just in an emotional sense, like in a practical sense. How am I supposed to pay bills? How am I supposed to care for this young child or young children or whatever the system was? How am I supposed to live in a new place? Do I get to live in the same place and he live in a new place, right? So you can do this. It is hard. It is. This is not easy. But guess what? Living in your abusive relationship wasn't easy either. Living neglected, abused, betrayed was not easy either. Okay? That wasn't easy. This isn't easy. You will get through it. You can do hard things because you already have done hard things. Your life is proof that you can do hard things. But these hard things, this season of learning to stand on your own 2 feet, learning to survive, learning new habits, finding resources in new places, getting support from new people, getting new support from old people, that leads to a beautiful season of newness of life. The book I wrote, I Choose Life, is about choosing growth, choosing healing, choosing progress. And those things aren't easy, right? It's not easy. It's easier to keep the status quo. It's easier to keep doing that coping and crisis dance. That's easier but it is much more fruitful to walk through this difficult season into life and breath and next and freedom and growth and fun and satisfaction and beauty. So you can do this. You can do hard things. Okay. And I will also tell you intentionally, it's important to live life intentionally in all seasons, but especially this one, if you find yourself being the one left behind. Um, Life is kind of like a current, like it's going in a direction. And if you don't move intentionally, life will just kind of move you along. It will just move you along, and other people's desires for you, other people's expectations of you have power, take precedence, and just move you along, right? So you can do that, or you can intentionally take one step at a time. Part of the level of overwhelm in the immediate crisis, right? When you first get left behind, right? Part of that overwhelm is there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of, I don't know how to get from here to there. I don't even know where I want to go. I just know this sucks and I got to get out, right? But you can intentionally take one step at a time. And you might be saying, well, what are my steps? What are my steps? I think I'm in an abusive marriage. I think I'm in a situation that I need to leave. I don't know how to leave. I don't know if I want to leave, right? All of that. What are my steps? What can I do? And this, when I say one step at a time, it's because you're not going to have it figured out. You're not going to have, all right, I'm going to go from here all the way to there. And I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're not going to know those things. And maybe even the people around you don't know those things. However, you can take one step at a time. And I just have a few steps that I have written out here, places where you can begin. All right, to take ground back, take territory back for yourself. Number one, speak your truth. Speak your truth. And if your truth is, I love this man even though he's hurting me, that's your truth. Okay? Don't be ashamed of wherever it is that you are. For a long time, I was married 10 years. So anybody that got a whiff of what I was dealing with at home would immediately tell me to leave. And that wasn't, they wouldn't use the word abuse, but they would say, you should leave. People said it kindly, people said it not so kindly. And what was important to me at that time, I wanted my marriage. I wanted the man that I chose to be a good man, right? I wanted him to get the help he needed. I wanted him to change. I wanted my life, my family to remain intact. And I wanted things to turn around. I wanted things to get better, right? But I didn't want it to get better at the expense of the nuclear family that we had built, right? So I understand that your truth, my truth at that time was, I'm fighting for my marriage. I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting for this man to be well, right? That was the mission. The mission wasn't my wellness. If I was honest, my mission was not my wellness. It was his wellness. And I didn't have control over his wellness. And we don't, right? We only have control over ourselves. But what was important was to speak my truth. And what is important for you in this season is to speak your truth. Speak your truth. If that's if your truth is, I love him and I want this to be better, that's your truth. If your truth is, he left and I am miserable, that is your truth. If your truth is, this abuse was horrible, the abuse was horrible, and I'm glad the abuse has ended, but I'm also sad or lonely or afraid, that is your truth. Speak your truth. Or I'm relieved. He left and I'm relieved, right? That is also your truth. It's important to speak your truth in fullness. Okay. And you might be saying, where can I share that? Number one, there are professional listeners like myself where you can speak your truth. Number two, or step two, gather your support tribe. Who are these people? Here's what I will tell you. Here's what, and many folks say, I have nobody, I have nobody, I have nobody. I was one of the people who thought I had nobody, thought, because the truth was I was surrounded with support. Even before I was ready to ask for any support or felt like I needed any support, I was surrounded by support. And I would wager that you are too. If you happen to be watching this recording, it's because you have this supporter right here. Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach, is in your corner. I have several services, professional level services to support you in this season and the next, because there is a next. So gather your support circle, your friends, your family. You may have a faith community that can support you, and you may have friends, family, and faith community that is not in support. Okay, that's an unfortunate reality, that there are people in our circle that choose to side with the abuser, or to choose not to say anything at all. They don't want to get involved, or they're afraid, or whatever. Their issue is not yours. Okay, gather who is in support of you, not necessarily in support of your marriage. This is an important distinction, but in support of you. I had a blessing of a tribe, a tribe of women who were in support of me. When I was in support of the marriage, they were in support of me, period. And when I could no longer be in the marriage, they were still in support of me. And that's a beautiful thing. If you love someone, who's dealing with abuse, and you want to support them, that's where you stand. You're not in support of the marriage or support of divorce. You're in support of them. Whatever they need, wherever they stand, whatever's happening for them, you be in support of them. That's what makes it happen. Okay? So gather your support tribe and make a plan. Well, I don't know what to do. Great. That's why you have these support tribe people. You sit down with them, and they may be professionals, a therapist, a domestic violence advocacy organization, locally or nationally. Okay, and you can go to thehotline.org for national support, thehotline.org for domestic violence support. And they can connect you with professionals in your area. There are domestic violence, not just shelters for people who need to have shelter, but just an array of support systems. For those of you who may not have friends and family you can go to, you can go there. Okay, so there is support always 100%. Okay, you can come here for support. Okay, make a plan. Where am I at? Where do I want to be? How am I going to get there? Bring in your support people to help you, because your brain is fried, and that's okay. Okay, and don't do it alone. If you haven't heard throughout all of this, if there's anything for you to take, it's don't do this alone. Do not do this alone. You don't have to. You don't have to. You have the Holy Spirit if you're a believer. And if you're not, it's easy. It's easy to join that plan to accept Christ as your Savior and have the comfort and presence of the Holy Spirit with you at all times. Okay. Don't do it alone. I particularly serve high achieving women of faith who've been through betrayal or trauma or abuse and would like to reclaim territory in their relationship with themselves. If that's you, you need to connect with me. Connect with me on this social media platform that you're watching me on. Connect with me at thereboundcoach.com. Connect with me by emailing dallas@thereboundcoach.com. Connect. Don't do this alone. Don't do this alone. Okay? You connect with me. If I'm able to serve you directly, I will. If I'm able to direct you to a resource, I will. You don't have to walk through this alone. Yes, you may be the one that's left behind, but you are not alone. I've created sacred ceremonies, which I'm really excited to share about, but there are opportunities to bring a sacred space for healing, for connection, for love, for restoration in your home, in your church, in a meeting place of your choice with the people that care and love you. And also virtually. We're also doing this virtually. So some examples are a disavowal ceremony at my 10-year anniversary. I was still legally married, but he had long since separated, and my life was very different by then. But I needed a closure moment, and it doesn't mean that you're completely over everything or that you won't struggle emotionally. It doesn't mean that things are magically different. But what I will tell you is that when we get into marriages or covenants with men, we do this ceremony thing, right? That says before the ceremony I wasn't, but after the ceremony I was, right? And we get divorced in courts with legal paperwork and lawyers and people and stuff and stress and heartache and a whole bunch of other things. The divorce process does not conclude things in our hearts. It's not the same, right? It's not a ceremony. It is a marker, right? When your paperwork is finalized, right? That's a marker in time, and it does legally change your status. But in our hearts, we don't get to deal with the heart stuff. It's very practical. It's a very practical process in the courts, but we need to give ourselves that space to emotionally, mentally, spiritually deal with that separation. And to disavow is to say, I no longer agree to these vows that I made, however long ago I made them. And so I facilitate a disavowal ceremony that is extremely healing and purposeful, and an opportunity to share with as few or as many of your trusted circle as you would like to do. I facilitate that also a Women's Day of Healing. Again, that can happen in a home, in a church, in a library. Um, a Women's Day of Healing is just that, a space for emotional and spiritual healing. We also do a Soul Nourish Night. Those tend to happen in the evenings, but if you've had uh, sister circle events or a grief and gratitude ceremony, which I also think is very, very nourishing to the soul. And so I want to be able to offer those things to you. If any of that was of interest to you, you're like, I'm curious, I want to know more, connect with me. Connect with me. My email address is dallas@thereboundcoach.com, or you can just inbox, or even simpler, comment as you're watching this, comment sacred if you are wanting to learn more about the sacred ceremonies. Comment sacred, and I will let you know more stuff. Okay, so that's it for today. I really appreciate you joining me. There are ceremonies, there are sacred rites and opportunities for us to move through. I won't say move past, but move through some of the traumas that we've experienced. And if you're one of those that have been left behind, I am so sorry that that has happened to you. I want you to know that you're not alone, that God Himself loves you and is with you in this moment, and I am here with you. You don't have to walk by yourself, okay? Reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your story and see how I can come along and serve. Thanks so much again for joining the Rebound Coach Live, and until next time, choose